The Syrian Quagmire, a stark lesson in intervention gone wrong. Few events exemplify the disastrous consequences of Washington's empire-first doctrine more vividly than the ongoing debacle in Syria. This conflict stands as a testament to the hubris and short-sightedness of a policy that prioritizes global interventionism over genuine national security interests, leaving ruin and instability in its wake. For over a decade, the U.S. has funneled over $40 billion in military aid, covert operations, and humanitarian support to opposition groups in Syria, ostensibly to depose Bashar al-Assad, a leader undoubtedly tyrannical, but hardly a unique figure among the many autocrats scattered across the globe. Yet, the justification for this massive expenditure remains tenuous at best. Assad posed no tangible threat to the U.S. homeland, and the purported moral high ground of opposing his regime crumbles under scrutiny when weighed against the chaos that followed. A tale of misguided ambitions. The U.S.'s objective was clear: regime change in Damascus. This strategy, however, ignored the lessons of Iraq, where the ousting of Saddam Hussein unleashed sectarian violence and gave rise to ISIS. In Syria, history repeated itself. Washington's support for a patchwork of rebel factions, including some with ties to extremist groups, turned Syria into a fractured battlefield. The result? A humanitarian catastrophe, millions displaced, and the rise of new threats, including the jihadist group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, a successor to al-Qaeda's Nusra Front. The geopolitical fallout. Washington's meddling created a precarious patchwork of power blocks. The Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, backed by the U.S., found themselves at odds with Turkey, a NATO ally fiercely opposed to Kurdish autonomy. Meanwhile, Turkey supported the Syrian National Army, SNA, a rebranded faction of opposition fighters previously cultivated by U.S. intelligence. This proxy warfare has not only prolonged the conflict but also sowed discord among supposed allies. Adding to the complexity, Israel has seized the opportunity to expand its strategic footprint, conducting airstrikes across Syria under the guise of countering Iranian influence. Iran, in turn, has seen its regional ambitions curtailed, its corridor of influence from Tehran to Beirut significantly weakened. Yet, this setback for Iran does little to justify the immense costs borne by the Syrian people or the American taxpayer. A hollow victory. What has Washington achieved in Syria? The answer is painfully clear: another fragmented, unstable state, incapable of self-governance or economic recovery. The Assad regime, though weakened, endures, while the US-backed opposition remains splintered and ineffective. Meanwhile, the so-called liberation has left Syria's infrastructure in tatters and its population in desperate need of humanitarian aid. The real question: why? At the heart of this tragedy lies a fundamental question: why did Washington commit so heavily to a conflict of such limited strategic importance? The official narrative, that Assad's tyranny justified intervention, fails to hold water. Instead, the real motive seems rooted in broader geopolitical calculations, particularly the desire to weaken Iran and disrupt its alliance with Syria and Hezbollah. Yet, Iran poses no credible threat to U.S. homeland security. Its economy is dwarfed by that of the U.S., and its military capabilities are modest at best. The notion that Iran's regional influence justifies endless intervention is not only flawed but also detrimental to America's own interests. A rational path forward. If the U.S. were to adopt a truly America-first foreign policy, the course of action would be straightforward. Withdraw all military forces from the region and close bases in the Middle East. Cease funding proxy groups and end covert operations. Lift sanctions on Syria and Iran, enabling their economic recovery and reducing regional tensions. Focus on diplomacy and trade to foster stability and mutual prosperity. This approach, rooted in restraint and respect for sovereignty, would mark a decisive break from the interventionist dogma that has dominated U.S. foreign policy for decades. It would prioritize the well-being of the American people while offering a model of principled engagement for the rest of the world. The Syrian fiasco should serve as a wake-up call. It's time for Washington to abandon the illusions of empire and embrace a foreign policy grounded in realism, prudence and respect for the sovereignty of other nations. Only then can the U.S. hope to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past and build a more stable and secure future. Conclusion: a case study in futility. The Syrian conflict starkly illustrates the folly of Washington's empire-first policy. Aimed at regime change and geopolitical dominance, this intervention has only exacerbated chaos, empowered extremists, strained alliances, and inflicted immense suffering on the Syrian people, all while yielding no tangible benefits for U.S. homeland security. Rather than protecting American interests, the costly and misguided strategy served to destabilize the region, prolong violence, and undermine the very principles of sovereignty and restraint that should guide foreign policy. A rational, America-first approach would prioritize withdrawing from entangling conflicts, ending proxy wars, lifting punitive sanctions, and pursuing diplomacy over intervention. Only by abandoning the illusions of empire can the U.S. foster stability abroad while safeguarding liberty and prosperity at home.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, share, and like the video. Check out these other From the Other Side specials.